And Pooja, thank you for bringing this article to us. Okay, the floor is yours, Pooja.
Hi, everyone. So today I'll be talking about the analysis of the United States Food and Drug Administration's new drug and biologic approvals, regulatory pathways, and review times from 1980 to 2022. So for the introduction, the FDA's mission is to protect public health through ensuring the safety and efficacy of drugs and biologic products that are on the market. They also advance and promote public health by helping speed up the innovation of products, which depends on obtaining evidence to getting marketing approval. US laws and FDA regulations are enacted to help reduce review times, which brings products to the market quicker and increases the number of marketed products. The two major regulations are the Prescription Drug User Fee Act of 1992 and the FDA Safety and Innovation Act of 2012. PDUFA provided extra resources to expedite new drug application reviews by collecting fees from sponsor companies for new drug applications for regulatory activities. And the Safety and Innovation Act amended the fast track designation and accelerated approval. And it also removed the requirement for needing evidence of added therapeutic benefit over already existing therapies on the market. It also created the Breakthrough Therapy designation, Rare Pediatric Disease Priority Review voucher, and the Qualified Infectious Disease Product designation. So there are a few designations and expedited reviews. The first is orphan drug designation, and that's for a rare disease or condition that affects less than 200,000 individuals in the US, even if it is prevalent in other countries. And this does not require added therapeutic benefit. Accelerated approval is for a drug that is treating a serious or life-threatening disease, and it shows that it is reasonably likely to produce a clinical benefit based on a surrogate endpoint. And the Safety and Innovation Act in 2012 removed the requirement for showing clinical benefit over other existing treatments. Priority review is for drugs that treat a serious condition that is expected to provide improvement in safety and effectiveness, and this does not require therapeutic benefit or severity for drugs that are designated as qualified infectious disease products or are submitted through a priority review voucher. And priority review shortens the FDA review time from the standard 10 months to 6 months. Fast track designation is for drugs intended to treat a serious condition, and non-clinical or clinical data shows that it has potential to address an unmet medical need. And the Safety and Innovation Act also removed the requirement for showing added clinical benefit over other existing treatments for the Qualified Infectious Disease Product designation. Breakthrough therapy is for a drug that is intended to treat a serious condition, and it shows significant improvement over available therapies based on preliminary clinical evidence. Qualified infectious disease product is a drug that's intended to treat a serious or life-threatening infection that's caused by an antibacterial, antifungal resistant pathogen or by a qualifying pathogen stated by the FDA. And this does not require added therapeutic benefits for approval. Limited population for antibacterial and antifungal drugs is for a drug that is intended to treat a serious or life-threatening infection in a limited patient population. And this also does not require added therapeutic benefits for approval. And regenerative medicine advanced therapy is for cell therapies, therapeutic tissue engineering, human cell and tissue products, and preliminary clinical evidence shows that the drug has potential to address an unmet medical need. So the objective of the study was to determine how effectively the laws and FDA regulations have helped advance public health through drug approvals with evidence of addressing an unmet medical need and improving patient outcomes. To accomplish this, they conducted an assessment of all new molecular entities, therapeutic biologics, and gene and cell therapies that were approved by the FDA from 1980 to 2022. And they also analyzed the approval pathways and designations within the legislative and regulatory landscape in the United States. To obtain data for this study, they collected regulatory information for new active ingredients, including new molecular entities, therapeutic biologics, and gene and cell therapies. They collected the non-proprietary and brand names, the application number, the FDA admissions, submissions, and approval dates, and the FDA regulatory designations and approval pathways that were used. They got this information from Drugs.FDA, the Orange Book, which is for drugs, the Purple Book for biologics, and the gene and cell therapy data was taken from the list of approved cellular and gene therapy products at CBER. They also got information from the Federal Register about notices of FDA regulatory actions, and information about the therapeutic class was taken from the World Health Organization's Anatomical Therapeutic Chemical Classification System. So for the methods, the drugs were classified based on their anatomical main group, which is the body system or organ that the drug affects the most. The unit of analysis was the first drug application for each drug product, and they calculated review times as the difference between the first NDA or BLA submission and the approval dates in the approval letter. The results are shown by the year of approval and 3 distinct periods that are defined by the enactment of PDUFA and the Safety and Innovation Act. And the analysis are broken down by approvals from 1980 to PDUFA, PDUFA to the enactment of the Safety and Innovation Act, and the Safety and Innovation Act to the end of 2022. There were also 2 investigators to ensure that the data was reliable. The first investigator was used for extracting primary data and placing the information into evidence tables, and the other investigator was used to verify that the data was accurate. So for the results, in total, the FDA approved 1,355 new drugs during the entire study period. 1,103 of those were new molecular entities, 235 were therapeutic biologics, and 17 were gene and cell therapies. There was an overall annual drug approval average of 31.5 with a standard deviation of 12, and the annual drug approval average increased from 23 during the first period to 29.8 during the second period, and then to 45 during the last period. The annual average number of new molecular entities increased from 21 during the first period to 24 during the second period, and to 32.1 during the last period. The annual average number of therapeutic biologics increased from 1.2 during the first period to 5 during the second period, and to 11.5 during the last period. So in this chart, it shows the new drug approvals by the product type of the gene and cell therapies, therapeutic biologics, and the new molecular entities, all within the 3 different periods. And from 1980 to PDUFA, there was 296 new drugs approved. 587 approvals were from PDUFA to the Safety and Innovation Act, and 472 approvals were from the Safety and Innovation Act to 2022. The greatest number of approvals occurred after the enactment of PDUFA to the Safety and Innovation Act, but the highest annual average number of approvals was after the enactment of the Safety and Innovation Act, which reduced the requirement of added clinical evidence for certain pathways. The 17 approvals of gene and cell therapies occurred from 2010 to 2022. And there's also an increasing trend in the annual average number of approvals from 23 to 29.8 to 45. So this table provides a breakdown of the number of approvals by the therapeutic class. It also provides the average number of annual approvals along with the standard deviation. The therapeutic class that had the greatest number of approvals during the entire study period was for anti-neoplastic and immunomodulating agents, and they had 306 approvals, which is 22.6 of the total overall approvals. They also continued to have the highest number of approvals after the enactment of PDUFA in 1992, but cardiovascular system drugs had the greatest number of approvals from 1980 to PDUFA with 54 total approvals. The overall number of new drugs approved was 1,355, and the annual average number of approvals was 31 26.5 with a standard deviation of 12 from 1980 to 2022. So over half of new drug approvals used at least one designation or expedited approval pathway. 695 drugs used priority review, with 15 drugs approved using a priority review voucher, and 19 drugs using qualified infectious disease product designation. 133 drugs used accelerated approval pathways using a surrogate endpoint. 221 drugs used fast track review designation. 116 drugs used breakthrough therapy designation. 498 drugs used orphan drug designation, with 412 drugs using orphan designation at first approval, and 2 drugs received the limited population approval pathway for antibacterial and antifungal drugs, and 2 cell therapies and 1 gene therapy received RMAT designation. So this table shows a breakdown of the number of products using the designations and regulatory pathways based on the therapeutic class. The percentage shows the drugs approved after the implementation of the designations. And again, anti-neoplastic and immunomodulating agents had the greatest number of approvals overall in all pathways besides the qualified infectious disease products pathway. And 19 of 25 eligible antibacterial and antifungals were approved using the qualified infectious disease product designation since 2012. This chart is specific to orphan drug designations. It shows the number of orphan drugs approved in each year from 1980 to 2022, with at least one orphan indication based on the year of their initial approval. In total, there were 498 drugs approved with orphan designation, and the number of approvals with at least one orphan designation increased from 61 in the period from 1983 to PDUFA to 187 from the period of PDUFA to the Safety and Innovation Act, and 250 from the Safety and Innovation Act to 2022. The average annual number of orphan drug approvals was 4.8 with a standard deviation of 3 during the first period, 9.5 with a standard deviation of 5.2 during the second period, and 23.8 with a standard deviation of 8.6 during the last period. And the majority of orphan drug approvals occurred after the enactment of the Safety and Innovation Act, with 250 total approvals, and this period also had the highest annual average of approvals of 23.8 approvals. The FDA is also able to approve new drug indications with orphan designation during or after the initial approval of a product. So this chart shows the median FDA review time along with the interquartile range, and it's broken down by therapeutic class and the different PDUFA periods. The review times vary by the therapeutic class, and the therapeutic class with the longest review time was anti-parasitic products, insecticides, and repellents, and they had an average review time of 26.1 months. The therapeutic class with the shortest review time was blood and blood-forming organs, with an average of 7.6 months review time. And there's also a trend in the review times decreasing with each new PDUFA period. During the pre-PDUFA period, the review time was 26.6 months. During PDUFA 1, it was 18.5 months. 12.2 months during PDUFA 2, 10 months during PDUFA 3, and again 10 months during PDUFA 4, and 10.6 months during PDUFA 5, and 8.6 months during PDUFA 6. The median review times was 18.2 months for standard review drugs, 8.1 months for priority review drugs, and the total for all new therapeutics was 12 months. This chart shows the annual median approval review times with the interquartile range. It's showing the overall trend for standard review, priority review, and the total for all drugs. There's a downwards trend in the FDA review times throughout the years, which indicates a decrease in approval review times. Their median review time decreased from 26.6 months during the pre-PDUFA period to 12.9 months during PDUFA to the Safety and Innovation Act, and 9.9 months after the enactment of the Safety and Innovation Act to 2022. Standard review time decreased from 36.6 months to 15 months. Priority review time decreased from 20 months to 9.9 months, and the total review time for all drugs decreased from 32.5 months to 11 months. For the discussion, overall, U.S. laws and regulations increase the number of pharmaceutical products approved for marketing in the U.S. Half of the pharmaceutical products received FDA approval through using at least one FDA designation. The average number of approvals using priority review doubled since the enactment of PDUFA. More than 1 in 10 drug approvals used accelerated approval that was based on a surrogate endpoint. Over 1/4 of drug approvals were approved through using fast track designation, where they did not need to show evidence of the potential to meet an unmet medical need. And since the enactment of the Safety and Innovation Act in 2012, more than 1 in 5 new drug approvals used breakthrough therapy designation that is based on preliminary clinical evidence that the product provides potential improvement over already available therapies. And the increase in approvals was driven mainly by therapeutic biologics with an emphasis on cancer conditions. So in the late 1980s, there was an insufficient amount of federal funding for the FDA, and that resulted in a backlog of drug applications. And PDUFA allowed the FDA to gain extra resources through collecting application fees, and this has helped expedite reviews and decrease review time. And the study showed that there was a reduction in review time since the enactment of PDUFA, and this is also consistent with another study that showed that 90% of drugs approvals for priority review from 2011 were completed within the FDA's 6-month timeframe. And in this study, it found that the review time decreased from 27.1 months before the PDUFA to 9.9 months after the Safety and Innovation Act, and a greater reduction in time could have been achieved if sponsor deficiencies had not occurred, such as labeling errors, optimal doses, and adverse events. The Key Forward Drug Amendment of 1962 required safety and efficacy data based on 2 adequate and well-controlled clinical studies. This allows for confirmation of evidence, so the FDA is able to determine if the benefits outweigh the risks. And the amendments were appended several times by the Orphan Drug Act, PDUFA, and the 21st Century Act to allow for more flexibility in the endpoints and clinical trials. However, the requirement of evidence based on adequate and well-controlled clinical trials was not changed. After the enactment of the FDA Modernization Act in 1997, the quantity of evidence was changed to require only 1 adequate and well-controlled clinical study, and additional confirmatory evidence that is not explicitly defined in laws or regulations. However, the FDA acknowledges that this can result in design flaws, random error, and bias, which can inaccurately conclude that a drug is effective. And a recent study has also shown that the phase 2 clinical trials can sometimes provide unreliable prediction of a drug's safety and efficacy. So the approval pathways resulted in changes in the types of endpoints that were used in clinical trials. There was a shift from requiring evidence of a clinical benefit to using a substitute to measure how well a product works. More than 1 in 10 drug products approved after the Safety and Innovation Act used surrogate endpoints, which is an indirect measure of patient outcomes, and that's only considered reasonably likely to predict direct patient benefits. The FDA also acknowledges that using surrogate endpoints brings uncertainty because the clinical benefit is not being measured directly, and the relationship between the surrogate and the clinical outcome is not always well established. Also, adverse events are a direct measure of a patient's health, whereas benefits are indirect measures that has an unclear relationship of benefits to the patient's health. This also shows that there is a risk in approving drugs for marketing that are considered investigational products because there's not any confirmatory evidence of safety and efficacy, and that transfers the burden of benefits and risks to the patients and the clinicians. So the new drug approvals that use fast track designation did not need to show evidence of addressing an unmet medical need, and new drug approvals that use breakthrough therapy designation only required preliminary clinical evidence of potential improvement over available therapies. Using expedited approval pathways for unclear therapeutic values or for prevalent diseases shows a misuse of FDA's expedited review process. This is because expedited pathways are originally intended for life-threatening, rare, or serious conditions where there is no available effective treatment. However, using it for prevalent diseases where there are treatments available is deviated from the intended purpose, which was originally intended for AIDS and cancer treatments. And previous studies have shown that there is a decrease in the quality of evidence derived from clinical trials and the number of pivotal trials that are used for approval. There has also been significant delays in confirmatory trials for applicants who have used expedited approvals. So as previously mentioned, the FDA granted approval for a large number of orphan drug designations, and trends are also showing that there is more of a focus on drug development for rare diseases. An orphan drug designation does not require showing added patient benefits, and they also often qualify for expedited designations and regulatory pathways, which allows them to have more flexibility in their study design. This results in a shorter developmental time than other drugs, and that leads to quicker marketing approval. But there's also no confirmatory evidence that the product provided any added benefits. As a result of the FDA's goal to provide patients with unmet medical needs faster access to drugs to treat serious and life-threatening conditions, new drug sponsors do not have to show evidence of added patient benefits to qualify for several designations and expedited regulatory pathways. Along with that, FDA's definition of severe disease and an unmet medical need also opens up expedited pathways to additional pharmaceutical products. The FDA defines a severe disease as a disease associated with morbidity that significantly impacts the patient's daily life and their ability to carry out daily functions, or a disease that, if it's left untreated, will progress to a more serious one. And this is not taking into consideration already available therapies. They define an unmet medical need as a condition whose treatment or diagnosis is not addressed adequately with available therapies. However, this definition has been debated, considering an effective off-label treatment would not be considered an available therapy because it is not approved by the FDA, which again is like parting from the idea of taking into consideration clinical evidence that has shown to be effective by overlooking effective off-label treatments. The FDA also stated that a drug that is not shown to provide direct efficacy or safety over an available therapy may provide a benefit to public health to qualify as meeting an unmet medical need. The statement is broad and vague because it's not very clear how a product would improve patient or public health outcomes without clinical evidence. And every drug has the potential to address an unmet medical need prior to it being evaluated in adequate and well-controlled clinical studies. A lack of evidence of patient benefits is shown in the qualified infectious disease products because the FDA is able to approve a new antibiotic without evidence of added clinical benefit or for an unmet medical need because the antibiotic is approved based on a clinical trial that shows it to be non-inferior to existing treatments. And the FDA claims that this benefits patients who do not respond to available therapies or who no longer respond to available therapies. There are some limitations of this study. It did not assess the post-approval clinical benefits of drugs that were approved by the FDA. It did not assess advances in scientific techniques, healthcare technologies, or changes in the healthcare system and other trends that may have altered new drug development. It also did not include certain biologic products, vaccines, and allergenics, and it did not evaluate whether new drug approvals improved patient outcomes once they were introduced into clinical practice. Additionally, the study data only included the first new drug application, which does not necessarily indicate added value from already existing therapies. However, a new approval of an already marketed product could potentially provide additional benefits to patients, but it's not very likely that the secondary approvals would have changed the observations in the study. And the next step for the study is to analyze the safety and efficacy that is needed for the development and approval of pharmaceutical products. So to conclude, overall, there was a significant increase in the number of approved drug products from 1980 to 2022, particularly biologics, with the majority being anti-neoplastics and immunomodulating agents. A significant number of new approved drugs use designations and expedited pathways that did not require evidence of addressing an unmet medical need or providing additional patient benefits. And the objective of bringing more products to the market quicker was accomplished. However, the quality of evidence for drug approval has been reduced and it has not matched the pace of approvals. These are my references. That's the end of my presentation. I'll now take any questions.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you. It's a very nice status check for the new drug approval, biologics approval from the article. So any questions, comment for this article and then for Pooja? So Pooja, could you comment it? So FDA set a lot of criteria for expedited programs for orphan drug designation and for other conditions. And from the discussion of the author, what impression did you get from FDA implementing these programs, abiding with the criteria they set for the program?
Well, I thought that it gets the products to the market quicker and more, it allows the patients to have more access to different products, but also at the risk of not having confirmatory evidence of like the products. And also the article did say that there's been like a delay in confirmatory trials for products that have used like these expedited pathways. So that also like has a risk at if these products are actually providing benefits to patients.
Yes, but what's your impression from reading this article that FDA, how FDA abide with their criteria requirements to apply these programs? Do you think FDA has set a rigid requirement and qualified the manufacturer to utilize this program, or is it loosely applied?
I think they're pretty minimal because their goal is to get products to the market quicker. So they don't require like a lot of confirmatory evidence. So I think their requirements were pretty minimal.
Thank you. Any other suggestions, comments for Pooja? Well, this for new students, these articles serve a wonderful purpose for background reading. A lot of programs and terms that you're not familiar with, it's actually the knowledge you need to acquire from this study in the program. These are all the daily jargons we use in the regulatory affairs. So you'll want to keep this article for your future references and read it from time to time to see how familiarized you with these articles. Thank you, Pooja.
Yes, thank you, Pooja.